Hiroshi Yuki is a weak student who is always bullied at school, and things are no better at home where his family looks down on him. But then he was forced into a virtual reality game where if a player dies inside, in the real world they will pay a very high price. And in there Hiroshi is determined to become stronger to take revenge on those who look down on him. This is Hiroshi. Today, he just had a career counseling session with his teacher. This wasn't his first time there, and like before, he still hadn't chosen a path for his future. The teacher brought up the idea of him considering rejoining the track and field club. From the teacher's words, it seemed that in the past Hiroshi had experienced something that made him quit sports, and that carried on until now, so he still didn't train or intend to rejoin. The teacher sympathized with him, then started to encourage him with motivational words that had nothing to do with Hiroshi's problem. Looking at the teacher's desk, Hiroshi knew he had just read How to Win Friends and Influence People and got too into it. The career counseling ended, and on his way home, Hiroshi's gaze turned to the schoolyard, where he saw students training. An orange-haired boy saw him and ran over. They knew each other, and this friend, like the teacher, advised him to start training again, but Hiroshi still gave his old answer no. The orange-haired boy couldn't force him, so they said goodbye. As for Hiroshi, to escape that past, he turned to virtual reality games. Today was the release day of a game he had been eagerly waiting for, Final Quest Part 22. On his way excitedly heading to the game store, Hiroshi was suddenly blocked by two street punks. Of course, looking at the dumb look of our main guy, it could only be bullying. Luckily, these guys came to collect protection money whether Hiroshi wanted it or not. After counting the money, they told him that if he ever needed someone beaten up, he could just tell them. Hiroshi thought to himself, "It's you two I want to be beaten up." Dodging the two street punks, Hiroshi rushed to the game store on release day, but when it was time to pay, he realized he was short of money. Thinking back to those street punks, Hiroshi realized he had mistakenly given 10,000 yen instead of 1,000 yen. Of course, without enough money, he couldn't buy the game, so he left in disappointment. Not knowing what to do, his feet stopped in front of an old-looking game shop named Kisaragi. Without much hope, he stepped inside, and indeed it was as expected every game there had been made 3 years ago. Hiroshi approached the shop owner, a big-breasted girl with long white hair, and asked about the newly released Final Quest Part 22. Hearing that, the shop owner burst into laughter, saying that game had been milked all the way to 22 parts and still hadn't ended. She complained that at the very least, they should change the title to trick new players. But Hiroshi only cared about whether she had it or not. The shop owner kept rambling about that game fun at first, but getting boring over time because who could play all the way to 20 parts, mostly just collecting things. Hiroshi felt uneasy because she hit the nail on the head. Indeed, it was only fun when he was little, and gradually it wasn't anymore. But he wasn't here to listen to a beautiful big-breasted woman scold him, he just wanted to know if she sold it or not. If she only wanted to scold him, he would leave. Then the shop owner stopped him and said she had the game. She even reduced the price to 10,000 yen to apologize for insulting him. Excited, Hiroshi agreed to buy it right away, but when the money was exchanged, he realized he had been tricked. This wasn't the game he wanted. The shop owner had already quickly put the money into the register and wouldn't allow a refund. She insisted this game was better than that 22-part one. According to her introduction, this was a fully immersive full-dive RPG that pursued extreme realism. Hiroshi didn't give a damn, he just wanted his money back. However, the shop owner said the game was for adults, which made him even less able to play it. But she started coaxing and tempting Hiroshi into walking the dark path, abandoning childish games. Then the game shop owner held Hiroshi's hand and introduced herself as Riona. She also often played this game and said she would teach him everything he needed with her big, generous heart and chest. Turned on by excitement, Hiroshi accepted and brought the game home. Not only did he get the game, but he was also given the beauty's phone number. Looking over the game, he discovered it had been produced 10 years ago. Hiroshi called Riona, but was met with the voice of the woman herself saying, "The number you have dialed is currently unreachable." Angered, he wanted to throw the game away but felt it was a waste of money. By the time he returned home, it was already dark. Hiroshi planned to take a bath first before playing. But as soon as he opened the bathroom door, he saw his younger sister Kate inside, quickly apologized, and ran back to his room. he decided to try the game first. He put the game into the console, sat in the chair, and began logging in. Upon entering, he was introduced to the game's objective: defeat the Demon King and save the world. The beginner's quest was to leave the town and go to Flora City to receive the next mission. Hiroshi was placed into the body of an ordinary villager. The scenery was stunning, and the sense of touch felt incredibly real. Even pain felt surprisingly authentic. Still reeling, an NPC walked in to find Hiroshi. Looking at the character design, he couldn't believe this was a game from 10 years ago. He checked the save menu and saw it was still there. Otherwise, he would have thought he had actually been reincarnated. The NPC introduced herself as Alicia, Hiroshi's childhood friend. She mentioned that today the two of them would be going apple picking. At that moment, another NPC entered and told them to come eat breakfast. This was Alicia's older brother, Martin. After hearing that Alicia had accidentally slammed the door into Hiroshi's head and injured him, Martin handed him an apple and said, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away." Hiroshi smelled it. Yes, it was the scent of an apple. He bit into it, and it gave him the sensation of eating a real apple. Hiroshi was delighted to have stumbled upon such a masterpiece. Seeing Hiroshi bite into the apple so crudely, Alicia used a knife to cut it for him. Then Hiroshi remembered the game's opening quest and asked the siblings how to get to Flora City. The moment they heard that name, both of them were startled. Martin warned him not to talk carelessly, treating him as if he were a fugitive. Alicia suggested they go to the farm to talk, but Hiroshi felt they were just overreacting and decided to go on his own. Suddenly, Martin lunged at him and held him tightly, saying he shouldn't run away. Through his explanation, Hiroshi learned that to protect the people from goblin attacks, Tito City, where they lived, had dug huge moats around the city. The townspeople were forbidden to leave, and no one outside was allowed to enter except special envoys. The town had also cut off all external communication. Hiroshi still didn't think it was that bad and even declared that he would take down those goblins, making the siblings look at him like he was beyond saving. Martin decided to show him how cruel this world was. Hiroshi, still thinking this was just early game training, got into a defensive stance, but before he could act, he took a full punch to the face from Martin. In pain, he screamed and cursed. Seeing that this still hadn't made Hiroshi wake up, Martin punched him several more times, causing his nose to bleed. Martin, munching on an apple, criticized him, saying that with a body like his, he couldn't even take down a rabbit, let alone a goblin. At this point, Hiroshi was furious. In real life, he had been bullied and pressured, so he turned to games for relief, yet here he was, being abused inside the game too. Unable to stand it, Hiroshi shoved Martin to the ground, thinking it was just a normal push, but unexpectedly, the knife had pierced through Martin's throat, killing him. Alicia was horrified at her brother's death, screaming angrily at Hiroshi. Even if he claimed it was an accident, dead was still dead. In a panic, Hiroshi chose to run away, which only fueled Alicia's rage. She chased after him like a wild beast, forcing Hiroshi to flee for his life for several days before finally losing her in an alley. Still shaken from having just killed someone, he reassured himself that it was fine, this was only a game, and if he logged out and played again, Martin would be alive. At that moment, Riona appeared to assist him. Though she looked beautiful, she was tiny in stature. She explained that she was a fairy character personally assigned by the game company to store owners. She plays the role of guiding him, so the NPCs and monsters in the game cannot see or hear her, but by the time she arrived it was already too late. Beginner quests like apple picking or meeting the childhood friend had all been thrown into chaos by him. Riona checked the title tag on Hiroshi's neck, and it read, "Childhood Friend Killer." Shocked, Riona realized he had chosen a path straight to hell the moment he entered the game. Hiroshi tried to explain it was just an accident, but as she pointed out, every murderer says that in court. Not wanting to be stuck with this title, Hiroshi wanted to restart the game, but Riona regretfully informed him that this game has no restart function. It is so much like real life that she had already explained it was a hyper-realism game. This game automatically saves progress, so even if Hiroshi logged out now, the next time he logged in he would start exactly where he left off, meaning he would carry the label Childhood Friend Killer until the end of the game. Riona also advised him not to tamper with the hardware because the game saves directly to it if he messed with it. He would have to buy a new VR console, which costs 900,000 yen. Only a lunatic would do that. Riona said he could buy a console from her shop for the cheap price of 1,200,000 yen. Selling like that would make her rich fast. Hiroshi angrily demanded a refund, but of course she refused. Her shop had a clear disclaimer of full liability exemption. When Hiroshi threatened to sue, Riona wasn't afraid. She had more time and money than some high schooler. She advised him to accept it and play. Riona reintroduced the game as Ultimate Quest, shortened to a fully interactive RPG released in limited quantities in Japan 10 years ago. It was long out of warranty and considered one of the least popular games in history. Yet there were still a few players, rare as they were. Among them was one called Jinji, who had also killed his childhood friend at the start of the game 10 years ago. Riona suggested Hiroshi seek him out for advice. Next, Riona instructed Hiroshi to check his item pouch, which contained 30 gold coins. She recommended he buy a few new outfits for disguise, since news of Martin's death had already spread and he was now a wanted man. They entered a tailor shop, and Hiroshi picked out a shirt priced at 15 gold coins. The shopkeeper quickly recognized Hiroshi, but, being a merchant, wouldn't report him. True, he didn't report him, but he raised the shirt's price to 25 gold coins, pressuring Hiroshi into buying it, making it clear what would happen if he didn't. Just like real life, he was being exploited right from the start. Not wanting to be treated like this the entire game, Hiroshi decided to search for Jinji. According to Riona, he had been living in a casino for the past 10 years. The two began searching for him. This city was quite large. Since it was cut off from the outside world, it had developed a self-sufficient model, which was normal here. Anyone who left the city without permission would be killed. This was why no one dared to rebel. Riona added that if Hiroshi wanted to leave the city, he had to meet Jinji. They headed to the entertainment district to find him, but instead of Jinji, Alicia found him first. Even with his disguise, it could only fool ordinary people. Being his childhood friend, it wasn't hard for her to recognize him. Riona explained that the NPCs in this game are integrated with artificial intelligence, making them completely autonomous, free-willed, and as perceptive as humans. Hiroshi again insisted he hadn't done it on purpose, and surprisingly, Alicia accepted that explanation. She even apologized for losing her temper and yelling before, saying she had now thought things through. She loved him very much. Hiroshi breathed a sigh of relief, thinking everything was resolved, but because she loved him so much, she would kill him and 4-4 so that all three of them could reunite in the afterlife. She took out the knife that had killed Martin and swore she would cut Hiroshi the same way she peeled apples. Riona warned him to be careful. Alicia was very strong, and most beginners chose her as a companion. Since she couldn't see Riona, Alicia assumed Hiroshi was praying to God, so she would just send him on his way faster. Faced with mortal danger, Hiroshi once again chose to run. Riona guided him to zigzag while running to escape from Alicia. By the afternoon, Hiroshi hid in a wooden cabin in the forest. The feeling of exhaustion was exactly the same as in the real world. His title had also been updated to Fast-Running Friend Killer. Fed up, Hiroshi wanted to pause to rest so he could attend school tomorrow. Riona tried to persuade him to keep going, but he wasn't free. However, when Hiroshi tried to open the menu, it wouldn't work. Riona realized that he had to finish the battle before the game could be saved. At that moment, Alicia lunged in and slashed his arm. When she attacked again, Riona punched her in the eye, temporarily blinding her and allowing Hiroshi to run away. Alicia shouted that she would find him no matter if he ran to the ends of the earth. While running, Hiroshi managed to log out of the game. He panted heavily and looked at his own hand, wondering how long it had been since he had run like that. The next day, Hiroshi was woken up by a message from Riona, inviting him to play the game again after school. At school, Hiroshi told his friend Mori about his experience. They both mocked it as a trash game and laughed together. Mori didn't want to criticize Hiroshi's gaming hobby, but advised him to deal with those guys. If Hiroshi kept playing, they would keep looking down on him. Hiroshi didn't care about them. That afternoon, Hiroshi came home exhausted and lay on his bed. He thought about Mori's words. Just then, there was a knock on the door. It was his younger sister Kita. She told him to stop playing games, since he had been yelling all night and kept everyone awake. She also advised him to start running again instead of wasting time on useless games. Hiroshi just brushed it off with a vague reply. After that, he logged back into the game right at the moment when he was still on the run and his arm was bleeding. First, he needed to treat his wound. Hiroshi checked his inventory and found some herbs, but he couldn't figure out how to turn them into medicine. He just kept poking the leaves, hoping something would work. At that moment, a drunken man walked over. He seemed to be a player because he knew what NPCs were. That's how Hiroshi realized this was Jinji. Hiroshi quickly introduced himself and asked for help. Jinji sighed at the sight of a newbie, but still used the herbs to heal Hiroshi's wound. When the treatment was done, the two of them entered a casino to talk. Jinji offered him beer, but Hiroshi refused because he was underage. Jinji said it was cola. Hiroshi tried it, and it really was, but somehow Jinji was still drunk from it. Hiroshi then explained his problem about killing his best friend. Jinji burst into laughter and started talking to someone. Hiroshi looked back at the table and saw there were 4 seats, which made him suspicious. He asked Jinji why he killed his own best friend. Jinji said it was the recklessness of youth. Just because his friend said a few things that annoyed him, he killed him. He even killed his childhood sweetheart. Hiroshi was shocked at how Jinji could do that. Jinji explained that the in-game body was modeled after the real world. This was an intensely interactive game. If you weren't strong or quick-witted, you'd never finish it. In the past 10 years, only one person had managed to clear it, an incredibly strong person in the form of a high school student, who completed the game with little effort. His name was Kamai, with the title Unmatched Adventurer. Jinji's own title was Inhumane. Hiroshi asked what he should do next. Suddenly, Jinji yanked off Hiroshi's cloak and shouted to everyone that the friend killer was here. He told Hiroshi to try bluffing during interrogation. Maybe he could escape punishment. Somehow, illogically, guards immediately surrounded Hiroshi. He tried to run, but Jinji tackled him and used a chokehold to knock him out. Jinji was surprised that even though Hiroshi seemed so weak, it still took him quite a bit of strength to make him pass out. When Hiroshi woke up, soldiers had already surrounded and captured him. It turned out Jinji had ratted him out to get money for drinking. Jinji told him to just deny killing anyone, otherwise he'd be sent to hard labor. Jinji himself had spent 13 years in prison, so he knew all about it. Hiroshi was then taken outside for the townspeople to see, and they threw rocks and mocked him. The soldiers escorting him were also hit, so they chased the crowd away. Hiroshi collapsed. He had never felt so humiliated in his life. Suddenly, he remembered the goddess at the start of the game saying that he was the hero destined to save the world. Using that as an excuse, Hiroshi regained his confidence and warned the guard that if they didn't release him, they would face the consequences. Hiroshi declared that as a hero, one day someone would come asking him to save the world. The guard immediately shut him up. He had heard that line so many times it made his ears bleed. Every thief or robber he caught said the same thing. He was sick of it, especially since he was working overtime without extra pay. Hiroshi kept trying to explain, but then he caught sight of Alicia's silhouette on a rooftop under the moonlight, still holding that apple-peeling knife, one eye blinded by Riona's punch. But instead of attacking him, she chose to leave. Panicking, Hiroshi begged the guard to throw him in jail right away. They then tossed him into a stone cell and went to prepare for interrogation. Hiroshi wanted to pause the game here, but it didn't allow it since the story sequence was still ongoing. With a tired sigh, he decided to wait. After 30 minutes, he tried logging out again, but it still didn't work. After several more attempts, he began to lose his mind, shouting so much that he quickly became hungry and had to shut up. From hunger, his discomfort shifted to needing to pee. Hiroshi decided to use the toilet nearby, but just as he was about to pull down his pants, Martin's ghost appeared to haunt him. Startled, Hiroshi fell backward. Thankfully, he didn't wet himself. Martin kept cursing and spitting blood at Hiroshi for killing him. Hiroshi defended himself, saying that Martin was the one eating an apple with a knife. How was he supposed to know? Martin thought about it and admitted Hiroshi had a point. It was partly his fault. Then he brought up a promise they had made before. He demanded Hiroshi repeat it, but Hiroshi had no idea what he was talking about. They had been friends for a long time, but Hiroshi had only started playing recently. Martin finally understood and said he would haunt Hiroshi until he remembered. This reminded Hiroshi of Jinji, who often talked to himself. Maybe he was speaking to the two people he had killed. Martin then clung to Hiroshi and kept spitting blood, lamenting that he wanted to live longer. Terrified, Hiroshi called for help. After several shouts, a girl finally responded. a red-haired girl. There was no doubt that a small girl like her could work in a prison. She freed Hiroshi and led him somewhere. On the way, she introduced herself as Ms. Risa. Risa took him to a room with a bed and some tools. Hiroshi was confused, but then Risa smiled wickedly and asked if he was ready. Suddenly, a bright red warning screen appeared asking Hiroshi if he was mentally prepared for intense stimulation. Blushing and breathing heavily, Hiroshi thought this must be the adult event Riona had mentioned. Two forces inside him fought. One pure and wanting to press cancel, the other excited and wanting to press yes, desire one. Risa laid Hiroshi down on the bed and told him to close his eyes. In the pitch-black silence, Hiroshi clearly heard the sound of clothes being removed. He was thrilled, thinking he was about to experience bliss. Then came the metallic clinking of tools. Opening his eyes, he saw himself tied up and Risa dressed in BDSM gear. That's right, she was the prison's interrogator. She said she would play with him. Earlier she had heard him say he was haunted, so she would beat him until the ghost left. If he couldn't take it and confessed, he'd be executed. If he endured, Martin's death would be blamed on the demon and Hiroshi would be freed. She began by sawing at his leg, making Hiroshi scream in terror. The more he screamed, the more excited Risa became. Just then Riona arrived in response to his earlier calls for help. She had been busy watching a movie and forgot about their gaming session. Hiroshi begged her to free him, but the chains were too strong, so she could only cheer him on to endure. When the saw bit lightly into his thigh, drawing blood, Hiroshi was in agony because the sensation felt so real. Desperate, he chose to wet himself. This only excited Risa more, and she planned to chop him up so he'd pee even more. Completely hopeless, Hiroshi gave up resisting and let her do whatever she wanted. Just as the saw was about to come down, a guard entered and cancelled the torture session. No reason was given except that Captain Tesla had ordered it. And Hiroshi's title was changed to the friend-killing fast runner who wets himself. Riona was happy that he had escaped death by a hair's breadth. But he himself could no longer feel happy. He logged out and swore never to play this game again. Waking up, Hiroshi immediately checked his pants to see if they were wet. Luckily they weren't, and he promised himself never to touch it again. Once, there was a district competition being held. Hiroshi decided to run again. Although he had been gone for a long time, there were still people who recognized him. Back in junior high, he had been regarded as a monster in track and field. His little sister also came to cheer him on. A while later, Mori came to encourage him. His friend said that the opponent they should pay attention to this time was that red-haired guy, who was also very skilled. In addition, there were many scouts here watching. This was the first competition at high school level. The classifiers as well as inter-high organizations would be following it. This could be considered an important event. Hiroshi felt a little nervous, so he went to the bathroom to relax. Unexpectedly, he met a foreigner. Hiroshi immediately recognized him as a famous athlete, Mike, known as the king of second place. After retiring, he had become a reporter. He had come here because he had heard about Hiroshi's incredible achievement in breaking the district short-distance running record. Today, there were many talented teams here, but Mike had the highest expectations for him. Hearing that gave Hiroshi more courage, but because he was so absorbed in talking with Mike, he completely forgot to go to the bathroom and entered the competition while still needing to go. Before starting, he and the redhead exchanged some provocative words. When the starting gun fired, Hiroshi had a slow start. However, he calmed himself and accelerated, overtaking one person after another. Just as he was about to catch up with the redhead, he tripped and fell, allowing the other guy to win. And not stopping there, Hiroshi could no longer hold it in and let the water flow. And this was witnessed by everyone present. Honestly, at that point, I'd go live on a mountain. Even monkeys would have to crown me their leader. In the men's restroom, Hiroshi washed his pants while wishing he could just die. After washing, he threw the pants straight into the trash. When he came out, Kita comforted him, but he didn't take her words as comfort, angrily shooing her away, hurting her feelings. As Kita ran off, Mike came over. He evaluated Hiroshi's performance as terrible. Hiroshi tried to explain, but it only made Mike think he was worse. Mike said an athlete's spirit was most important. Being unable to perform under pressure was a fatal flaw. But in his view, besides Hiroshi's running problem, he had many other issues. Looking at his face, it seemed he still hadn't realized it. So Mike gave him one line. "Look inside and change your pants." That line meant nothing and only made Hiroshi more frustrated. Returning to the present, Hiroshi woke up after deciding to quit the game. During breakfast, Kita brought up that it would be better for her brother to keep it down and not play late-night games to avoid disturbing others. Hiroshi said she also made noise when bringing friends over. Then the two started arguing. Their mother stepped in to make peace. Kita blamed the game for making her brother like this. Then Hiroshi declared he had quit the game, surprising Kita. But then she shifted to disappointment, thinking her brother quit because he was too weak. Whatever he did, he always gave up halfway, just like when he joined track and field, then quit to play games, and now quitting games, she called her brother pathetic and left for school. Hiroshi's mother said Kita only wanted him to be as cool as before, because she always told her friends about how amazing he was. Hiroshi went back to school as usual. The two street punks came to extort protection money again. He was too tired to resist, so he handed over the money and left. When Mori came, he ignored him. After school, he met his teacher, who asked about his future plans. He said he still didn't know and told the teacher to wait. When he went outside, he received a call from Riona. She had called him many times and wanted to meet at the game store. Coincidentally, he was planning to go there too. Upon arriving, he wanted to sell the game. She tried to dodge the topic, but he was determined to sell it. She asked why. Wasn't it already obvious? From killing people to becoming a criminal, then a prisoner, and nearly getting killed. Riona burst out laughing again, which made Hiroshi furious. She was the only one enjoying this while he clearly wasn't. If she wouldn't buy the game back, he'd just sell it somewhere else. But she advised him not to do that if he wanted to get his money back. She had her own reasons and couldn't tell him the truth about this game. She had called him here to show him something and brought up a player named Kamui, a name Hiroshi had already heard from Jinji. Riona explained that Kamui was the youngest member of the Tokyo City Council and a highly skilled player of this game. She showed Hiroshi an interview clip in which Kamui said the game had greatly influenced his life, and that he was the only one to ever beat it. She wanted Hiroshi to clear the game himself after all. That was still better than quitting entirely. On top of that, she had found a guide to beating the game written by Kamui himself. Hiroshi wondered why, if a guide existed, no one else had finished the game. Riona explained that Kamui had written it back when he was still a student, and back then, everyone's ego was sky high. His writing style was so arrogant and trash talk heavy that nobody could stand reading it all the way through. Sure enough, just a few lines in, Kamui was already insulting Hiroshi, calling him pathetic for even looking up the guide. Gritting his teeth, Hiroshi kept reading. Kamui's advice to newbies was to focus on physical training before even playing 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squat jumps, and a 10 kilometers run every single day until all your hair fell out. Thinking that was ridiculous, Hiroshi skimmed ahead for more useful tips. He found the section, "My childhood friend wants to kill me." Kamui's advice: if you've triggered this event branch, just die 4 times and get it over with. Still, he mentioned one in-game trick. If you can't win a fight, then win without fighting, just find the opponent's weakness and exploit it. Hiroshi wasn't convinced. Next was, haunted by your best friend's ghost. Kamui said to just let the ghost follow you. Then came the weapons section, where Kamui pointed out a hidden sword in the corner of the starting room. He also suggested buying extra items. Naturally, Kamui ended his guide with another barrage of insults toward Hiroshi's entire family line. Swallowing his anger, Hiroshi was about to say something when suddenly Riona hugged him from behind, whispering in his ear, if anyone other than Kamui could beat this game, she'd really want to marry that person, and she wanted more than just marriage. Even with nerves of steel, Hiroshi was caught off guard and pushed her away. But seeing her puppy dog eyes full of desperate hope made him waver, and in the end, he agreed to keep playing. Once again, he logged back into the game, right where he had quit. A soldier urged him to hurry and leave, pushing him along with his sword to avoid getting splashed again. Risa, still giddy, wanted to arrange another meeting. Hiroshi flatly refused. She even revealed her perverted desire to keep the blanket he had wet, so she could preserve the scent. Leaving the torture chamber, Hiroshi was taken through an underground passage used to transport prisoners outside. Ahead lay a grand estate, which the soldier introduced as the palace of the queen ruler of the closed city. The current resident, and the one who had helped Hiroshi escape, was the commander of the royal guard, Chief Tesla. Inside, Tesla politely pulled out a chair for him, though he sniffed the air, catching a faint smell of urine. He explained why Hiroshi had been spared. Martin's sister, Alicia, had killed him with what was supposedly a fruit knife. But upon investigating the scene, Tesla had only found a sword that Hiroshi could use. From his experience, stabbing through someone's throat with a small knife required professional skill, so he had concluded the death was an accident. Thus, Hiroshi was innocent. Overjoyed to finally meet someone sane in this garbage game, Hiroshi accepted Tesla's offer of a meal. The commander also warned him to be careful around Alicia. Even with the truth revealed, she wouldn't let him off so easily. Tesla told him to call on him anytime he needed help. Hiroshi thanked profusely. At long last, he had gained his freedom after months of hiding like a fugitive, and the first thing he needed to do was go home and retrieve his sword. Riona said that since his village was on the outskirts, it would take them a few days to get there. However, even though he had been proven innocent, the villagers didn't believe it, or maybe they had been collecting rocks all morning with no criminal to throw them at, so they chose Hiroshi as their target. He had to run for his life to escape. When they ran out of rocks, they grabbed hammers and shovels to hunt him down like low HP zombies in a shooter game. Riona commented that this was very much like real life. Even if someone is cleared of wrongdoing, there will always be people who don't believe the truth. They only believe what they want to believe. Now, if Hiroshi wanted to return to his village, he would have to cross that bridge over there, but there was someone guarding it. Riona suggested they buy items while waiting for the villagers to give up. After all, he would need to prepare for his encounter with Alicia. Unfortunately, Hiroshi only had a few coins left, not enough to buy anything. He asked Riona how to earn money in the game. Riona replied that it was just like in real life. He could work, borrow money, or live without working by stealing. For example, he could rob that old couple over there. Of course, he had no desire to go to jail again, so he decided to work. Riona then led Hiroshi to an employment office, a rundown, shabby place. Why? Because the villagers still disliked him despite his proven innocence, so he couldn't find legal work, and this office only offered illegal jobs. Inside, he met an older woman who immediately called him murderer instead of his name. Even if he explained, no one would believe him. Still, the lady boss had a job for him, working in the mines for a salary of 20,000 coins a month. It sounded reasonable, but Hiroshi only planned to buy a few smoke bombs to fight Alicia, and Riona said they cost only 200 coins each. So Hiroshi asked if there was any part-time work paid by the hour. The woman did have one. Just follow the requests of someone named Burin, and he'd get paid 100 coins an hour. It sounded easy until she explained that Burin was a middle-aged man with a masochistic fetish, and Hiroshi would have to whip him with a leather strap according to his requests. Naturally, Hiroshi found this unacceptable and refused. When he asked for another job, the woman grew angry. There were countless people desperate for work, and here he was being picky. She kicked him out. Riona looked disappointed in Hiroshi. He wouldn't steal, and when he tried to work, he couldn't manage it. That left only one option for making money: borrowing. And they'd have to borrow from another player. Riona took Hiroshi to meet Jinji again at the casino. Being a player, Jinji could also see Riona, and the two greeted each other since they already knew each other. While Riona tried to keep things friendly, Hiroshi was still bitter that Jinji had sold him out. But Jinji said Hiroshi should be thanking him. Without him, Hiroshi wouldn't have been cleared of charges. This made Hiroshi furious. Riona tried to calm things down and asked Jinji to lend Hiroshi some money, but he refused, even telling Hiroshi to get lost so he wouldn't be there and make a mess. Pushed to the limit, Hiroshi chose to attack. He lunged at Jinji, tackling him to the ground. Just as he was about to throw a Western-style punch at his face, Jinji reversed the hold and pinned him down, pulling out brass knuckles and aiming a punch at him. Hiroshi's agility saved him as he dodged and grabbed Jinji's hair. Jinji countered by pinching Hiroshi's side. In the end, Hiroshi's strength prevailed, and he pinned Jinji down. But just as he was about to finish him off, Martin's spirit appeared again, haunting him by saying he was about to kill someone. Panicking, Hiroshi ran to a corner of the room, pointing fearfully at empty space. Jinji sympathized. He too often saw the ghosts of two people he had killed. They would appear for a few seconds or sometimes an entire hour before disappearing. As he spoke, they appeared again. Seeing how Jinji talked to himself, Riona realized he still regretted killing his friends, which was why he kept playing the game. Somehow, Hiroshi could relate to that, so he apologized to Jinji. Jinji didn't mind anymore. Thanks to Hiroshi, he had gotten some exercise after years of doing nothing. Jinji then agreed to lend Hiroshi the money. Outside, Riona asked Hiroshi how it felt to have defeated a stronger opponent. But before he could answer, his badge changed again. Now it labeled him as the guy who killed his best friend, runs fast, wets himself, and robs old men. The two then went to buy smoke bombs. Hiroshi entered a shop and met the owner, Melissa. Since Jinji had only lent them 600 coins, Hiroshi bought 2 smoke bombs and kept 200 coins for emergencies. However, the shop owner demanded a surcharge. Although he had been cleared of his name, his bad reputation still lingered, so she charged 600 coins for the 2 bombs. Feeling it was unfair, Hiroshi tried to leave, but was stopped by security and forced to buy them. Bitter after being overcharged twice, Hiroshi realized that aside from Tesla, every NPC here was just as trashy as the rest. After several days of walking, Hiroshi finally returned to where it all began. He gently opened the door to check. Inside was silent and chillingly cold, with Martin's blood still fresh and red on the floor. Looking around, Hiroshi spotted his sword in the corner of the room. It seemed like nothing would happen and he could just take it and go, but no. Alicia emerged from the shadows. She knew he would come back for it and had been waiting. Hiroshi hurried to use his smoke bomb to escape, but he didn't have a lighter to ignite it. Riona reminded him to buy a lighter next time, but there might not be a next time, as Alicia charged forward with a fruit knife. At that moment, someone burst in through the window to rescue him. Hiroshi thought it was Commander Tesla, but it was Risa, here to save her little bedwetter. Risa declared that Alicia's current actions counted as intentional assault, and since Hiroshi had been cleared by Tesla, if Alicia continued to ignore that, she would be arrested. Hiroshi asked how Risa knew he was here, and she confessed she had been tailing him, tracking him by his smell. Shocked that there was still a smell, Riona explained it was because he hadn't changed clothes since entering the game, so the urine stench was still strong. She also suggested Hiroshi invite Risa to the party, as she was strong and could protect him later. While he was thinking it over, Alicia attacked from behind. Risa grabbed his shirt and pulled him away. In Alicia's mind, she wanted nothing but to execute Hiroshi and ignored his cleared name. Anyone in her way would be killed. Alicia lunged with her dagger, but Risa blocked and pushed her back, then moved in with a cleaving strike. When the dust cleared, Alicia had vanished. While everyone was confused, Riona spotted her on the ceiling. Hiroshi panicked. What kind of realistic game was this? He seized the chance to grab the knife Alicia had dropped and threw it outside so she'd be unarmed, but she immediately pulled out 2 more knives for credibility. Risa switched to serious mode, and as Hiroshi was protected, he realized he could invite her to his party. However, Risa revealed the truth. She wasn't here to protect Hiroshi, but to monopolize him and then torture him until he wet himself again. Hiroshi was horrified. She was no different from Alicia. The 2 lunatics clashed over him. Although Risa was stronger, her attack speed was slow, while Alicia's agility let her dodge and put Risa on the defensive. Then, in a split second when Alicia struck, Risa parried, knocking both fruit knives away. Without giving her opponent a chance to react, Risa prepared to finish Alicia with another cleave, but Alicia reminded her that while Risa was strong, she wasn't fast, then kicked her in the stomach, followed by another blow that knocked her out. Alicia decided she would deal with Risa later, but finish off Hiroshi first. Riona rushed in to buy time for Hiroshi to escape, but Alicia had learned from last time since he had a support fairy. She wore protective eye gear. Remembering Kamui's advice, when Alicia charged, Hiroshi aimed for every girl's weakness, her chest. He thought she'd react as expected, but nope, she was used to such tricks. Instead, she kicked him in the groin, bringing him to his knees, and promised him a painful death. Hiroshi thought the game would end here, but then Martin's spirit appeared not to help, but to tell his sister to kill Hiroshi faster. In the moment of crisis, Hiroshi tried to think about what Alicia hated, and then he realized it was him. Hiroshi chose to confess his feelings. He confessed to Alicia right when her knife was close to his face. This unexpected confession made Alicia falter. Realizing it worked, Hiroshi kept saying flirtatious words to her, but Alicia soon could not accept it after the death of her brother. Even though he said it was an accident, it was still the death of a person, and that person was her beloved brother. Everything happened because he wanted to leave this city. She also loved him, but now nothing could go back to the way it was. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she resentfully asked why he ran away. After saying that, Alicia ran away from this place as if escaping from reality. Even though he had escaped death, Alicia's words made him realize he had been wrong all along. He thought this was just a game. He had no memories of the past with Alicia and her brother, but to her, he was a close friend. His greatest sin was killing Martin and choosing to run away instead of staying and trying to save him. He realized how foolish he had been. At that moment, Risa had also woken up. Hiroshi thanked her for helping him, but she politely said that if he was really grateful, he should give her one of his fingers. Hearing that, Hiroshi no longer felt grateful and chased her away. After that, he took back his sword, thought for a while, and decided to go somewhere, telling Riona to wait for him here. He then followed Martin's memory from the start of the game, when he had said they had a promise at the base of a tree near the village. When he arrived, it was a huge ancient tree. Then Martin appeared, and the older brother asked Hiroshi if he was ready to die. Hiroshi smiled and said he wasn't, because he still had things to do. Remembering Kamui's advice, if you can't drive the spirit away, then accompany it, Hiroshi invited Martin to go on an adventure with him. The two shook hands, and Hiroshi was taken back to the past of the three of them, a time when they were always together like shadows. Finally, Hiroshi remembered the promise from back then, they would always be friends forever. With that promise, he returned to the present, and Martin returned to his normal, non-threatening form. He was happy that Hiroshi remembered the promise, that they would always be friends, and then Martin no longer had any attachments to the mortal world. He thanked Hiroshi and vanished. Even though it was a game, Hiroshi still felt a little sentimental. Riona had followed and witnessed everything. She comforted him, saying that now only Alicia remained, but they could deal with that slowly. First, they needed to fix the rusty sword and buy a new pair of pants to replace the smelly, pea-stained one. In addition, Hiroshi's title had been updated. He was now the greatest killer of a best friend, fast runner, bedwetter, and old man robber. Suddenly, a bell rang throughout the area. Hiroshi ran to see what was happening and saw the city engulfed in flames. Riona was surprised because she had never encountered this event in the game before. Hiroshi ran into the city to check, and everyone was panicking, running everywhere. He tried to ask what was going on, but no one listened. They just kept running. Riona said the game closely followed reality. People only cared about themselves first and had no time to stop and explain. She suggested he could ask the blacksmith while fixing the sword. From the blacksmith, he learned that goblins were attacking. Hiroshi was puzzled, asking if the city wasn't protected by a moat. The blacksmith said yes, but the greatest drought in 500 years had dried it up, and the goblins had taken advantage of the situation to attack. Seeing this as a chance to prove himself, Hiroshi asked the blacksmith to fix the sword so he could fight monsters, but the blacksmith was too busy fleeing and told Hiroshi to forge it himself. With no other choice, he had to sharpen the sword on his own. As he sharpened, he heard screams for help outside. Hiroshi was irritated because it was taking too long, but Riona reminded him that maybe he didn't need to sharpen it. Sometimes a rusty sword could deal more damage to monsters. That made sense, so Hiroshi ran outside to fight, but Riona stopped him because he still didn't have the strength for that. The goblins were too strong, and if he went out there now, his chance of dying would be 120%. If you die in this game, you will face very terrifying consequences. Hiroshi thought he would actually die in real life, but Riona said he would be permanently banned from playing the game and his console would be destroyed. Even she now had to admit this game was truly trash. Riona revealed that in fact someone had already died in the game and had their console locked. Many lawsuits had been filed against the game company, but the company used its power and money to cover up the matter. Then a protest broke out and spread to retail game stores. Not long after its release, this garbage game was forgotten, which was also why she didn't want to tell him when he tried to sell the game, and instead tricked him into buying it back. In short, Riona said he was not yet strong enough to defeat them, and she suggested logging out and getting advice from Kamui. However, before leaving the game, Hiroshi begged Riona to let him see the goblins just once. She agreed but told him to stay silent. Hiroshi cracked the door open to peek, and he was shocked by their appearance and incredible speed. After admiring them, he was about to log out when he suddenly heard the cry of a child. A goblin had targeted a little girl. Without hesitation, he rushed out to save her, but Riona pulled him back, saying the console cost a hefty 120,000 yen, and she could only discount it to 126,000 yen for him. Hiroshi was baffled. She must be insane, since the original price was only 90,000 yen, and she was overcharging massively. Still, Riona advised Hiroshi to give up because the girl was just an NPC, not a real person. But thinking about Martin, he couldn't abandon her. A life was still a life, and he didn't want to see anyone die, at least not in front of him. While they were arguing, 3 soldiers appeared outside to protect the girl. 3 against 1 should have been enough, but this goblin was too strong. In the blink of an eye, it bit off one soldier's arm. The other 2 attacked together, but the monster was so fast it moved behind one of them, slashed the second to pieces, then tore off both arms of the third before finishing him off. Hiroshi was horrified by what he saw. Riona explained that this was why all newbies were told to leave the city as soon as possible to avoid encountering goblins. Hiroshi asked if there was truly no one who could fight them. Riona said there were 2, Kamui, and another man named Ada, who in real life was the Eastern and Pacific boxing champion. In an interview, when asked who his toughest opponent was, he answered, "The Goblin." Even knowing there was no chance of victory, Hiroshi still decided to go save the girl. Riona, tired of his stubbornness, promised to give him a discount on a new console, but still told him to change his pants. There was one the blacksmith had left behind. Though a bit dirty, it was better than rescuing someone while wearing pants that reeked of pee. Once ready, Hiroshi took his stance, and Riona would distract the goblin so he could save the girl. As soon as it turned away, Hiroshi dashed out to grab the girl, but he didn't expect there were actually 2 monsters. Even so, he didn't back down. He told the girl to run in another direction while he stayed to block the 2 monsters, but they still chose to chase her. Hiroshi immediately pursued them, and in a life-or-death moment, he activated his acceleration skill and saved the girl in an instant. But even after escaping once, he couldn't just keep running. He needed to find a way to defeat the 2 goblins. Just then, Tesla arrived in golden armor. With a single sword slash, he turned the 2 monsters into white-haired exorcists. Soldiers also arrived, and Hiroshi handed the girl over for them to escort. This was the first time Hiroshi felt like a hero. His title was updated. Now he was the greatest killer of a best friend, bedwetter, old man robber, and biggest lawlican, a title that couldn't be more ridiculous. At that moment, Tesla approached him. Having witnessed his bravery, the commander invited him to become a mercenary to protect the city. Hiroshi immediately accepted. After all, fighting alongside Tesla meant the commander would protect him if anything happened. When you agreed, Tesla suggested that he would take you to the royal training grounds for practice. Once everything was over, Hiroshi saved and exited the game. Hiroshi was happy that he had made progress in the game. At school, Hiroshi recounted the in-game events to Mori, who was glad that he could enjoy it. Mori noticed that Hiroshi had changed a bit. That night, before logging in, Hiroshi watched Kamui's guide. Kamui explained how to leave the starting city in 3 ways. First, complete side and main quests to raise the player's reputation in the city. Once it's high enough, Hiroshi could request an entry-exit permit. Second, escape through the back gate, but you would encounter goblins about to attack the city, which required the strength to fight them. The third way was the worst before the goblin event occurred. You could form a party to counterattack and escape, or hide somewhere for 4 days until the goblins finished attacking, then slip out. Alternatively, you could join Tesla's royal guard, but Kamui warned that only a fool would choose to fight alongside that commander. It would be extremely harsh, with a death rate as high as 300%. However, Kamui also gave advice for those who chose to enlist. He said if the player already had the title, Greatest Friend Killer, there was still a chance. But before starting the guidance, he made Hiroshi promise first. He then congratulated Hiroshi on escaping from the ghost haunting and the small friend-chasing curse. The following instructions would give him only a 0.5% chance of survival. First, he would need to endure the first 5 training sessions. Then, he must survive the second goblin attack. Though very difficult, if he succeeded, he would learn many interesting secrets. Kamui said no more. Everything would depend on Hiroshi's own abilities. Determined not to buy another console, Hiroshi declared he would win. He then made peace with his sister, telling Kita that he would finish the game, and that he might be noisy in the coming days, so he hoped she would understand. This time, he wouldn't run away like in track and field. Hiroshi then entered the game. After accepting Tesla's request, Hiroshi was taken to the Queen's castle. As Kamui had said, surviving 5 days would be fine. Tesla first took Hiroshi to meet the Queen. She introduced herself as Governor, ruler of the city of Ted. While Hiroshi was greeting her, she suddenly hugged him, blessing her guards as important people. Hiroshi was so happy he moaned aloud. Tesla then led Hiroshi to the training ground, where he was introduced to 2 other newcomers, Nada and Balu. Tesla explained that their task was to repel the goblins attacking Queen Govern's castle. After explaining, the commander left, leaving a man named Bob to take Hiroshi to his quarters. Hiroshi was given a private room. Riona, who had been silent, advised him to stay quiet when Bob spoke, as he might give useful information. After changing clothes, Hiroshi was taken by Bob to train. As a new recruit, Bob would teach him some combat basics. Bob encouraged him, saying nothing would be too difficult. Suddenly, when touching Hiroshi's body, Bob remarked that he was quite slim, more suited for intelligence work. Hiroshi denied it. At the training ground, it turned out that the instructor was the same soldier who had arrested Hiroshi earlier. Since the man disliked him from the start, he assigned him harsher training than Nada and Balu. After the soldier left, a girl arrived, Kathy, the one who had returned the little girl home safely earlier. She had heard from the girl about Hiroshi's bravery and was happy to meet him. While they were chatting, the soldier reminded Hiroshi to get back to training. Hiroshi then had a sparring match with the soldier. Of course, with 0 combat experience, he quickly got beaten badly, losing in the most humiliating way possible. The soldier arrogantly mocked him as being as weak as a snail. However, Nada stepped in and gave the soldier a beating, restoring the rookie group's honor. Now that Hiroshi was seen as weak, no one paid attention to him anymore, not even Kathy or Bob, and this was the result of a high school kid wanting to be a mercenary being completely isolated because he was too feeble. A tiring day passed just like that, and Hiroshi lay sprawled on his bed, telling himself he only needed to endure 4 more days, then fell asleep. On the second day, the game's sleeping system worked just like in real life, making him exhausted. Riona informed him that he had overslept, and in a panic, he quickly changed clothes and rushed outside to join the others. But no one cared about him anymore. Now, their focus was entirely on training Nada. He was then told by a soldier named Amos to start by practicing sword swings, and while training, Nada and Balu approached him. Both of them had heard of his friend-killer reputation, and of course, no matter how much he denied it, they didn't believe he hadn't killed anyone. Nada even warned him to know his place and not cause trouble for others. In the middle of this tense moment, Kathy spoke up to cut the conversation short, and Nada and Balu let Hiroshi off. He then began training with Kathy, and thanks to her, he learned quite a bit. But before he could absorb much, on the 3rd day he was matched against Nada, and of course, 1 blow was enough to finish Hiroshi. Nada and Balu mocked him for being unable to even lift his head, and both in real life and in-game, Hiroshi felt more useless than ever. Sitting alone in a corner afterward, Riona tried to comfort him. Hiroshi knew it would be tough, but he hadn't expected it to be this hard. Riona told him to just hang on a little longer, then took him to a counseling room she had just found, saying maybe talking about everything could help. Trusting her, he went in and opened up about being isolated for being weak and even being extorted for money. The counselor listened and then bluntly told him the problem was him. He had no ability but still chose to join the army, so he had only himself to blame. Hearing that only made Hiroshi angrier. He had come to relieve stress, but the counselor only made him more upset. Riona pointed out that real-life counseling offices often didn't help much either, which infuriated Hiroshi even more. Why would she bring him here if she knew that? At that moment, Kathy came over, saying she knew he was holding in frustration and needed to release it. She suggested he could try praying, as it might help somehow. Following her advice, he and Riona went to the church to confess. After listening to his story, the nun said he was cursed and would begin a purification ritual. He thought it would be something solemn, but the nun simply dumped a bucket of cold water over him and declared it done. It felt absurd, but he couldn't do anything about it. And as expected, it had no effect because on the 4th day, he still got beaten badly. After Amos was done with him, Nada and Balu came to shake him down for money, and when he said he didn't have any, they pinned him down and beat him. Kathy brought Amos over to stop it, but he acted like nothing had happened. By this point, Hiroshi's situation was so miserable that even Riona could still joke, which made her character seem terribly insensitive. Hiroshi snapped and argued with her, and right then Kathy saw him talking to himself. Nada and Balu warned her that if she kept hanging around with Hiroshi, they'd treat her the same way they treated him. Not wanting to be beaten and humiliated, Kathy told them she didn't know him. Hiroshi really was unlucky bullied in both the game and in real life. Fortunately, in real life his friends hadn't yet betrayed him, but that would probably happen soon if he kept being so weak. As Nada and Balu laughed at him, Riona even laughed along, leaving Hiroshi unsure whose side she was on. But perhaps out of pity, she promised to help him. On the 5th day, the last day of training, early in the morning Nada discovered someone had stolen his shoes and thrown them into the sewage drain. He treasured those shoes because they were made by his mother. But that was only the beginning. Next, his sword went missing, and he later found it jammed into a toilet. Naturally, Hiroshi was the first person he suspected, since no one else besides him had been punched by Nada. Bob stepped in to stop him, saying there was no proof, and the others also spoke up, as no one had seen Hiroshi go near Nada's locker. At this moment, there was a scream, and the whole team ran to the locker room where they found the cook there. She said her underwear had been stolen, and it was in Nada's bag. Now he was no different from a pervert in everyone's eyes. He was then criticized and despised by everyone, and even Balu followed the crowd to drive him away. Now the bully had experienced what it was like to be bullied. They later received the news that Nada had been discharged from the army. Unexpectedly, Tesla showed up, bringing a letter accusing Amos of stealing the shoes, sabotaging the sword, and framing Nada. It clearly stated that the reason was because Amos had been humiliated when Nada defeated him, and the letter was signed by Balu, which caused the two to turn on each other. Tesla then asked the whole team, and Kathy was the first to stand up and confirm it was true, followed by everyone else. Amos was then dismissed from his position, and Tesla said he would soon appoint a new commander for them. Kathy and the others also apologized to Hiroshi, and of course, none other than Riona was the mastermind behind it all. Although he was grateful to her, making an old man cry like that was a bit much. And tomorrow was the day the goblins would attack. Yet Hiroshi still wasn't mentally prepared. Riona asked if he was going to give up. Of course not, he had come this far, and even if he died, at least he would die after giving it his all. Seeing his determination, Riona felt relieved, and then she finally revealed the real reason she had made him play this game. She wanted him to destroy the game. The story was that 10 years ago, when she was still a player, she met Kamui. Back then, with the mindset of a high school girl, she really liked older men like him. When she learned that he was about to leave the city of Ted, she gathered all her courage to confess her feelings. But he rejected her for a reason that would make any man furious because of her oversized chest. It had developed abnormally, making him feel scared, so he turned her down. Since then, Riona had held a grudge because she felt insulted, and she decided to find someone who could beat the game and destroy Kamui's top position as a form of revenge. She also planned to marry the winner, so they could act lovey-dovey in front of Kamui and make him regret rejecting her 10 years ago, a reason that couldn't be more ridiculous. Late at night, Hiroshi couldn't sleep and went outside to get some fresh air. He didn't expect that Riona had prepared everything so thoroughly just for that purpose. He felt like all his efforts weren't worth it because of her. At that moment, Tesla also came by. He couldn't sleep either, as he didn't know when the goblins would attack. The two then chatted, and the commander learned that Hiroshi wanted to leave the city. Tesla said he also wanted to leave if he weren't the captain of the guard. He wanted to see the vast world out there, and he said that if they survived the battle, he would go with Hiroshi. To make sure the battle went smoothly, Hiroshi logged out of the game to check Kamui's guide. As soon as he opened his eyes, he was startled to see his little sister Kita staring at him. He asked what she was doing in his room, and she said she came to check on him when he didn't respond to her calling him for breakfast outside the door. Seeing her brother was fine, Kita left. Hiroshi then began reading Kamui's guide about the goblin event. True to his childish nature, Kamui opened with a barrage of insults about Hiroshi's incompetence and worthlessness. He then made Hiroshi promise something before giving instructions. Kamui then revealed a trick that greatly surprised Hiroshi when he read it. And that was all Kamui could teach him. Right after that, Kamui's website crashed. Remembering the trick made Hiroshi a little thoughtful, and then when he returned to the game, on the 6th day, the goblin attack event arrived. Riona was very excited for this event, fussing over Hiroshi like a mother sending her child to school asking if he had eaten enough or gone to the bathroom. Tesla then stepped up to give a speech and introduced the new commanders for this campaign, and they were none other than Risa and Alicia. Both had terrifying reputations in the mercenary world, Risa the masochistic woman, and Alicia the hell's fruit knife. Hiroshi was absolutely chilled to the bone. Now the goblins weren't the only thing Hiroshi had to worry about in this event, especially with the cold, sharp glare from his former childhood friend. Setting aside personal grudges, Tesla began reading a speech to rally the soldiers' morale. But since there was still no sign of the monsters, he ordered the troops to spread across the city to patrol. Hiroshi was assigned to the eastern village, his own village, and Tesla kindly sent Risa and Alicia to accompany him so the three could reminisce. Hiroshi begged the commander to reconsider, but Tesla insisted he should resolve their conflict so they could work together to defeat the goblins. With no other choice, Hiroshi reluctantly went with the two women, determined to keep his distance to avoid her torment. The three patrolled the quiet city streets, where most people had already barricaded themselves at home. Then, ahead, a robbery broke out. The thief grabbed a bag and ran toward them, shoving Hiroshi aside before he could react. But when he passed Alicia, she snatched the bag and immediately sliced off his hand. Hiroshi didn't even bother removing the hand before returning the bag to the victim, causing the poor girl to faint in fear. Risa interrogated the thief, who confessed someone had incited him, telling him that since the soldiers were away fighting the goblins, the city was defenseless and ripe for looting. He also revealed there were many robberies happening around the city at that very moment. When Hiroshi demanded to know where the instigator was, the thief pointed to a casino. The three headed there and found many civilians being held hostage. Looking around, they spotted a man who seemed strong enough to be the ringleader. Risa and Alicia would handle the bandits while Hiroshi rescued the hostages since the two women still considered him weak. The plan began. Alicia and Risa took down the bandits one by one, while Hiroshi freed the captives. To his surprise, Jinji was among them, explaining that the bandits planned to kidnap people and sell them to Cambodia. But when Alicia defeated the bald man, she realized he was too weak to be the leader because the real mastermind was Jinji. He locked Hiroshi in a chokehold, using him as a hostage, demanding everyone leave their valuables and scram, or he'd snap Hiroshi's neck. But Hiroshi was no longer the coward who only ran away. He elbowed Jinji in the stomach to break free. Risa wanted to finish him, but Hiroshi insisted on fighting the man himself. Since their last encounter, Jinji had prepared by getting a pair of brass knuckles. Just as the two men were about to throw down, Alicia ended the fight with a single punch, telling Hiroshi to stop embarrassing himself. All the bandits were captured, but it turned out this was all part of Jinji's plan. He wanted to be arrested so he could stay in prison, get free food, and avoid the goblins entirely. Hiroshi found him pathetic. Before being taken away, Hiroshi advised him to change his ways, and being lectured by someone younger actually made Jinji pause in thought. Tesla then appeared, praising Hiroshi for catching the criminals. Hiroshi deflected the credit to the two women, but before they could talk more, an alarm rang. The goblins had attacked the western gate. Everyone rushed there, but Hiroshi suddenly got a stomachache. Pretending to take a shortcut, he ran to the toilet and strained with all his might. As soon as he finished, he pulled up his pants, ready to join the fight, only to find a goblin had been watching him the entire time. Hiroshi screamed for Riona's help, but outside the game she didn't hear and assumed he was just dealing with hemorrhoids. Suddenly, the goblin's head was cut off by Risa, who had followed him from the moment he ran to the toilet. She asked for his sword to inspect it, then stabbed him in the leg, making him scream, which only seemed to excite her more. Taking advantage of Alicia's absence, Risa invited him to be hers, promising she'd make him feel good in the truest sense. But the wall Risa had was something Hiroshi just couldn't handle. At that moment, Alicia walks in, interrupting them. The two start arguing, and Hiroshi slips away to regroup with Riona, only for his stomachache to return, triggered by stress. It's like that time he wet himself during track practice. Determined not to give up, Hiroshi calms himself, and once the pain subsides, Riona tells him to head to the north gate where Risa and Alicia already are. He sprints there just in time to see Tesla's team preparing to face a horde of goblins, numerous, ferocious, and with high-level types among them. The battle is fierce. Tesla wipes out clusters of enemies with wide-range skills. Risa slashes them down while savoring the fight. Alicia strikes from the shadows, and the nameless extras die for dramatic effect. When they finish off the horde, Kathy and Bob rush in to report that goblins at the west gate have breached the city and are attacking the Queen's mansion. Sensing a strong enemy there, Tesla orders everyone to defend the mansion while he heads there alone. Hiroshi follows, either to help or to be a burden. Upon arrival, they see a massive red orc, One Eye, slaughtering soldiers. Tesla reveals he's the one who took its eye before, making this a rematch. He sends others to fetch the iron cage while he fights it. When their weapons clash, the impact is deafening. Watching from the sidelines, Hiroshi is awestruck, but knows One Eye is dangerously strong. He wants to help but trembles in fear until the two girls arrive, telling him to leave it to them. Risa charges first, but is instantly smashed into a wall and knocked out. Alicia realizes the foe is both fast and strong, so she engages in a high-speed duel. The fight ends when soldiers bring the cage containing goblin children as hostages. Hearing their cries distracts One Eye, and Tesla lands a killing blow. But Hiroshi senses something's off. It's too easy, not like what Kamui described. Looking at the goblin kids again, he realizes they've been captured long before today. He confronts Tesla, who says nothing, then slays One Eye and glares at Hiroshi. "You know too much." The Queen appears, revealing the truth. She had goblin children captured to provoke repeated goblin attacks, then positioned herself as the savior, uniting the people and turning the city into an independent territory free from other nations' rule, while preventing citizens from leaving. Tesla and the Queen have been using goblins as a means of control. The righteous Commander Hiroshi admired is actually a hypocrite who, after riling everyone up, eliminates soldiers to silence witnesses. Naturally, Tesla targets Hiroshi next, and Kamui's 300% death rate warning now makes sense. Right at the start, you're forced to fight a high-level boss. Tesla immediately unleashes his ultimate attack to kill Hiroshi in one blow. Terrified, Hiroshi prays for a painless death, but Alicia blocks the strike. Hiroshi asks why, and Alicia says Martin appeared to her in a dream, telling her to forgive him. She accepts him and has been secretly protecting him, saying she's happy he confessed to her. She hopes he'll live on for her and her brother. Then, she dies in his arms. Hiroshi asks Riona if NPCs can be revived, but sadly, they can't. Always seen as weak in game and in real life, Hiroshi had endured it until now. This time, he can't take it. He fights back. When Tesla lunges, Hiroshi deflects every strike, using the tricks Kamui taught him successfully. Going back to when Kamui was giving instructions, he said that a player's stats in this game would increase significantly when their emotions fluctuated, but only positive emotions. As long as you had unwavering belief, passion, and courage from the depths of your soul, you could rise above adversity and change your fate. And finally, Kamui said, this wasn't just a game trick, it was reality. Hiroshi rose up and launched a relentless assault on Tesla, his blows storming down like a tempest, forcing Tesla into pure defense. Then, in a single instant, Hiroshi disarmed him and lunged for the finishing strike, but his beginner's sword couldn't pierce Tesla's top-tier armor. Well, since this game was so realistic, Hiroshi accepted his own end. Tesla drew another sword to execute him. In that moment, Hiroshi met Martin again, realizing he might already be dead. Hiroshi wept and apologized to Martin for not protecting Alicia. Martin smiled to reassure him, then reminded him of the promise they'd made before when Hiroshi had invited him to go adventuring together. Martin then told him that now was the time to fight. Returning to the game, Hiroshi's broken sword was suddenly enveloped in an aura that shattered Tesla's blade. It was called the Demon Sword. This time, both of them entered a stance for their decisive blow. Tesla gathered all his strength and charged at the speed of light, and Hiroshi calmly prepared to meet it. Suddenly, the Queen interfered. She shoved Hiroshi aside and took Tesla's blade straight to the stomach, ending the game. Hiroshi woke up to find his game console in flames. The next day, feeling depressed over such a ridiculous death, he spoke with Riona. The game shop owner comforted him, admitting that even she hadn't expected such a situation. She then asked if he wanted to play again, saying she had a spare console to lend him. Hiroshi said he'd think about it. He then went to his computer to close Kamui's guide only to find a new entry titled, "You have been killed and lost your console." As Kamui said, this game was reality, he just needed to believe in himself. He could continue from right before his death, he only had to find a new console, insert the damaged game disc, and enter the code Kamui gave him 10 times. If he was lucky, he'd return to an hour before he was killed. With the hope of saving Alicia, Hiroshi decided he would go back into the game, but not yet. He needed to prepare thoroughly. Day by day, he began training. His family started to look at him more favorably. His teacher, though still without an answer to Hiroshi's plans for the future, accepted it because he felt something inside Hiroshi had changed, thinking he'd somehow struck gold with his character. As for the 2 street punks who often asked him for money, he scared them off so they wouldn't bother him again. And then, a month later, Hiroshi returned to the battle. This time, he was determined to save everyone. And that's where the anime ends. Farewell.